a special guest at the tavern today. He has been in the wrestling business for over 15 years, and you've most recently seen him on AEW Dark. We have the Starving Artist Mike Magnum. Mike, how are you today, man?
Doing good, man. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure, man. It's great to have you on here at the tavern, and I know it's a little cold everywhere right now, so we appreciate you stopping by. So we'll just get right into it, man. What was your early fandom like? Who were your favorites growing up? Were you always a fan of professional wrestling?
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, I think from like the group of like the age range that I'm in, I think I was one of the later people to like really get into it, die hard, but once I did, it was like probably early 2000s when I just dove in head first. But once I did, for whatever reason, I was just enamored with Triple H. Early 2000s, Triple H was just my guy. So I studied him like a hawk. You know what I mean? When I was coming up, like he was the guy I studied. I tried to emulate, and be from the work ethic in the gym to in the ring and training once that eventually came to be. But my guy was Triple H for like the longest time. Once I started to, grow, not just, age wise, but mentally, I started to see things and understand the business more. And then it became more of like, Austin, Jericho, those guys started to really influence me a lot. But Triple H was my like first guy that really, drew me into wrestling.
Yeah. And Triple H in the early 2000s, not a lot get better than that. I mean, he was at the top of his game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, 100%. I mean, from he really at that time. He was the total package, man. The physique, the entrance, he was legit. Him and Stone Cold. Like Rock was starting to go out and doing his thing. So like him and Stone Cold were like the guys. When I was growing up, at least.
So what was that moment for you when you became a fan, but when was that not enough and you made the decision, you know what, I want to try my hand at this and I want to give pro wrestling a go?
Man, that's such a cool question, because for me it was kind of at the same time that I fell in love with it. My dad took me to a show. It was like kids my age liked it and I didn't really know much about it. And my dad took me to a show. I went to, I'll never forget. It's so funny. All the matches I've had, I can't remember, but I'll never forget, May 8th, 2000, Nassau Coliseum. I'm from Long Island. It was Raw and we went, and it was funny because I had never been before. So I'm standing in this, like the vestibule before you even get inside to the arena. And I'm like, man, all these people, I'm little kids. I'm like, all these people are here, to see these wrestlers or see one guy or two guys. And I didn't even realize we weren't even inside the building yet. So then we got inside the building and I'm like, you guys, you've been before. You remember the first time you went when you were a kid, it was like larger than life,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so, I was right then. And I just looked around and I just got involved, with everything in the show. And I remember just being there and going like, it was 2000. So I think I was 11 or 12. My math could be a little off, but whatever, around there. And I remember just going, this is it. Like, you have that moment and you're like, this is what I was meant to do. Like, I loved it immediately. And that was it. I could give you the whole story, but like that was right there was where I just knew, okay, this is giving me a feeling I've never had before. And I'm chasing that,
Yeah. So that spectacle really pulled you in, that big, larger than life spectacle.
That was it. Just, that, and then just seeing the guys coming out in person and just, just being so, I've never, you guys have been, the first time you go, it's like, you never seen anything like that before. And especially being a kid, it blows you away. And I just remember experiencing that. And like I said, I had that feeling and I'm like, man, I'm chasing this feeling. I don't care what it takes. I'm chasing this feeling.
Yeah. You can't really beat that first time when you walk in an arena and you look down and see the ring in the middle and you see you know, back in those days, back when I first went, you know, you had the one light over the ring and everything else was dark, and it just, God, such a good feeling to think
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I feel like the lifelong wrestling fans who continue to watch into their 30s, 40s, 50s, I
Yeah.
feel like what keeps you really a fan is it keeps you in touch with that being a kid.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah,
like
I
that
agree.
feeling.
That's so true. It's so funny because I always say to people, like, when you, I could talk to someone, you know, that's 12 years old or like, you know, 90. And when I say I'm a wrestler or I wrestle or whatever, they light up like a little kid. You know, you could be any age and they'll just, oh, and then there's always a memory too. Oh man, my grandpa used to watch, Bruno San Martino. Well, there's always like a nostalgic memory, and it always brings a little kid out in you, which is another thing that I just love about it still. You know, it's such a good point. It's so true.
So when you finally made the decision to kind of, you know, seek out training and really go after it and train to be a pro wrestler, how did your friends and family react? Were they taken back by it? Were they supportive? Did they have questions or worries about it?
Oh man, it's a great question. Uh I was kind of a loner. I think like a lot of wrestling fans were, especially in that time period. Like it was cool, you know, in the early thousands, and then started to fizzle a little bit. So you know what I mean? Like your clique became smaller that really like enjoyed wrestling after a while. And so you know, again, knowing that I wanted to do it and like studying Triple H, like, and he was always the guy that was just, you know, I'm the student of the game and this and that. So I always just kind of kept that mindset of like, if my group of people is 20 or 2, you know what I mean, what I need to be focused on is my goal and making it, you know what I mean, in wrestling. So when I started, like, friends wise, I had, you know, maybe 1 or 2 close friends that, you know, were either one of them wanted to do it with me and the other one just thought it was awesome. Family wise, my family was always supportive. My mom of course was nervous, and my dad too, but you know, my dad always brought me up like, you know, that Disney mentality, like anything's possible, you know, your dreams could come true. And so, you know, he always had that little kid spirit too. So I mean, when I was younger, so, you know, they wanted me to pursue my dreams, but of course they were scared. I mean, it's a scary business, and plus they don't, you know, they didn't know much about it. I was the one that was, you know, obsessed with it as a kid growing up. So when I said I wanted to do it, of course, like any parent, they were scared, but they were always supportive.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, the moms are always the ones a little more worried, it seems
Sure.
like.
Yeah.
So what were the first days of training like? Did you ever have any moments of doubt or anything like that?
Man, my training was very weird. Like not like most. I got it actually. There was like a church that was doing a ministry, and their ministry was wrestling, and they had a couple of guys that, you know, back in the early 2000s. I started in 2006. And it was like those guys that, you know, they probably, I think one of them was like an extra maybe once, and the other one did something on the indies for a little while. And so now all of a sudden now they have the credentials to train somebody, right? So
yeah.
yeah. And me being a kid and just, you know, I was 17 and I just wanted to wrestle. And I knew, you know, I always, you know, I say when people ask me that question, like when you go to high school, then you start looking at colleges to prepare yourself for what you're going to do with the rest of your life. But I knew that I wanted to wrestle, so I just didn't even waste the time or money or energy. I said I want to find a wrestling school, and you know, this one kind of just fell into place where it was free. I didn't have to move far, and I was kind of like, all right, cool, I could do it. And these guys are offering this for free. This is great, and it was good for what it was. I was always confident. I mean, when I was a kid, I was nervous. I was the kid that in school that, like, you know, would do the book reports like after class because I couldn't stand up in front of the classroom. But when it came to wrestling, I was confident because I knew I could be somebody else. I could play a character. I don't have to be me. I could be this character I want to portray and figure that out. And it was almost
Right.
like, you know, having a second personality, which is what it is. But so it was a little easier in that sense, for lack of a better term, because nothing about wrestling training is easy, which you guys know, I'm sure. Yeah, but I mean, I was always confident because I knew it was in my head, no matter how much everybody has doubts, but I knew it was what I was meant to do. So I knew I'm doing it, so I'm not going to fail. Even if I fail, I'm not going to fail because I'm doing it and I'm going for it, you know?
Right. Now, when you're in those early training days, you know, everyone talks about the physical aspect of it and those early pains of getting your body kind of calloused to hitting the ropes and taking those bumps. But talk a little bit about learning the psychology of wrestling when you had no idea about it. Was that something hard to kind of adjust to, learning just the in-ring psychology of pro wrestling?
Yeah, another great question. You guys are awesome, man. Good questions. It's funny. I was just on the phone with a really good friend of mine today, and we were talking about teaching it though. And it's funny because for me, the reason why I said that my training was a little weird was that these guys, they knew the basics. The guys that, you know, taught me the fundamentals of taking bumps, hitting the ropes, getting your body callous, like you said. Excuse me. But that stuff for me, it kind of, they couldn't teach me that. You know what I mean? They obviously didn't admit that, and I didn't know it until later on when I started to kind of learn it as I went. But that was the way I came up. I was, you know, I learned the basics. I learned how to take bumps. I learned how to, you know, do those things. But then I just went and started to, I had to figure the rest out myself, like, you know, branding myself and you know, promoting myself, and then getting into the ring and going, okay, this is how you do this. And when you're a fan, you know, especially for your whole life, and you really study it, and you know, you can get those things. Okay, this is supposed to go here. This is supposed to go there. You're supposed to do this here, and that stuff. But you don't really learn it until you're in it and you're feeling a crowd. You know,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of guys would say the same thing. I mean, you know, those sorts of things, you can call a match and plan it step by step. But there's guys that do that and are successful and can also work around it depending on what the crowd's doing. But it's hard to place things until you know, where you are on the card, who you're following, who you're before, you know, because there's things you have to not, you know, respectfully not do or do, right?
Right.
Sure.
So those things you learn as you go. I didn't really learn that stuff in the early times. I kind of learned that every single time I had a match. I learned something different, and that's why they say you're always learning, because look at things now, right? We learned all this stuff, and now we're wrestling in front of nobody or our
Right.
peers, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
You're always learning something different. So I mean, those things came as I went. You know, it was like you put it perfectly. The calluses, you know, the callousing my body to the bumps and the ropes, and you know, the turnbuckles and the, you know, high heavy bumps and stuff. But that stuff just came in time and in experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So walk us through some of the first. So you've had matches with Abyss, Amazing Red. You tagged with Tracy Brooks, Madison Rain, Angelina Love in mixed matches. Talk about your time at Victory Pro.
Oh yeah, that was great. And they gave me a platform when, you know, the place that I had started at folded. I had a match booked there with Abyss, and then the place, the indie company that was attached to the, for lack of a different or a more respectful term, school, folded. So Victory Pro opened their doors, and that was awesome. So we had the match there, and it was awesome. And that, to go to your other, the last question, I learned a ton from Abyss in that first match I had with him, as far as those little things go, because I never really had that. I had matches with, you know, other indie guys that were good. I worked with, you know, Jimmy Snuka when I was 17 years old. I got to learn little things here and there.
Wow.
Yeah, which was incredible. But you know, when I worked with Abyss, he was like, you know, in that first match we had together, I mean, he was like really hot on TNA every week, and we, you know, he packed the place out, standing room only, and like, so I learned that too, like going into a really big match for the first time. I think I was 19 or 20. You know, so, and I'm, you know, that was a big crowd for that night. And then I'm learning from a guy who's, you know, at the peak of his career at that time. And he really was just so good to me, and he didn't have to be. I mean, he knew right away that I was, you know, green, you know, but he was great. You know, he was awesome. That was something I learned a lot from. But Victory Pro did a lot for me. They put me with a lot of people. They trusted me with a lot of people, and I really hit my stride there.
That's awesome.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I had some great matches with, and all those matches you just mentioned were all with Victory Pro too. So I owe them a lot. Same with NYWC. They always helped me out a ton, and they've always, to this day, just been so good to me.
When you're in a match with someone like Abyss, who, like you said at the time, I mean, he was absolutely the top big man in TNA. I think he was arguably one of the top big men in pro wrestling at the time.
Yeah.
When you're in a match with someone like that, like, what are things that you kind of pick up from him? What are those lessons that he teaches you? What are some of those?
Man, it's stuff that's why I love the wrestling business, because it's stuff that, like, you can't learn unless you're in there doing it. Like, and it's not even stuff sometimes that you realize you're teaching the other person. Right. You know what I mean? Right. Just the timing on things, and, you know, just those little, it's so hard to put into a word, because it's just those little things that you wouldn't even think about that just come naturally to someone.
Just those little nuances that you just can't.
Yeah, timing, and, you know, just down to the movement of when to throw this punch, or when to, you know, you could have, like I was talking about before, you could have a spot plan, but, like, you know, wait. Okay, the people are here now. Now we go for it. Right. You know, just those little psychology things that are the difference between, wow, that was a great match, and, like, damn, they were eating out of your hands. You know what I mean?
Right.
And yeah. I think that was a match, and again, all credit to him, obviously, and it's not just me being humble, it's the truth. That was a match where it was awesome, and by the end, when he put me into the thumbtacks, we had the meeting out of our hands, which was just so cool.
That's awesome.
That was the first time I did that too, by the way, which was another experience.
Yeah, how was that?
Oh man, it was wild. I did it again with him. Another company booked a match, like, I think 6 months later. We had a Monsters Ball match, and we did it again. It's something, man. It's exactly what it looks like. You know, you're getting, you know, 1,000 thumbtacks just pressed into your body all over the place.
Now what's worse, getting slammed on them or having to pick them out individually later?
Well, I don't know if I want to expose this part, but I mean, I'll just put it like this. Abyss showed me a much easier way to get them out, because at first they started pulling them out, and he came over and had a little trick to get them out a little quicker. Maybe not as painless, but a little quicker. Because at that point too, I mean, he was doing it with Abyss, with Sabu, and, like, you know, a ton of guys. So he had some tricks of the trade to help get them out, which was a lot more helpful to get them out quicker.
Secret of the business.
I feel like I'd take the quicker way out, even if it was a little bit more painful.
Yeah, exactly. And now, if you saw it too, you'd be like, I don't understand how that's better, but it was actually better, believe it or not. But honestly, the second time we did it, he did it through a table, and the table hurt. Not that the tacks didn't hurt, don't get me wrong, but the table hurt worse than the tacks did, because the table was not, you know, it was a thick, heavy, not gimmick table.
Oh, God.
At the time, I was 20, like, what did I say, 20, 21 maybe. So I was like 190 pounds. You know, I didn't really start putting on a lot of size yet. And I don't know, the matches, or at least that part of the match, I know is on YouTube. I mean, if you look it up, like, he drilled me through that thing, because we had to break it, you know, and it was a legitimate break. So, like, my bones hurt the next day, because it was legit just my bones that broke that table, you know?
Oh, wow.
I can't let you get by. You mentioned you had a match with Jimmy Snuka. Now that, for old school fans, Snuka is one of the biggest names of that time. Everyone knows him jumping off the top of the cage at the Garden. What was that like, to be in a ring with a guy like that?
It was so cool. That was one of the good things that the school, the company had done, was able to do for me. Like, they had the show booked, and they you know, the way they had put it was, I was working the hardest in the school, and they said they wanted to give the match to me. So it was one of the first times I experienced that not everybody's your friend that you think is your friend.
Right.
Because I'm 17 years old and I'm wrestling Jimmy Snuka, and there's guys here that were a little older that have been training, so you start to learn that, like, I was excited. I was proud of myself. I had a very, like, the little kid, mindset, mentality still. And everybody's just like, kind of like, yeah, okay, good for you, Mike. Screw this guy. You know what I mean? Like, why does
Right.
so it was a learning experience in a lot of different ways, but it was great. He took care of me. He had just gotten, like, I felt it was another thing that I learned too and just got to see firsthand. That this was before that movie The Wrestler came out. Like, he had just gotten stomach surgery, and he's there wrestling for, like, however much he got at like a YMCA somewhere against a 17-year-old kid that had been training for like a year, not even a couple months, so I mean,
Right.
it broke my heart for him too. Like, that, and he was such a nice guy. So he took care of me, let me basically just beat the heck out of him until the finish, where he moved out of the way of a corner splash. And I went into the, to give him a splash in the corner. He moved, I hit the buckle, bumped, he climbed up on the second rope and gave me the splash and pinned me. It was a very quick, that's a match I'll always remember because it was so easy. He turned his back. He was pulling up his knee pad. I'll never forget. He turned his back. I jumped him. I worked him on all four corners, went for a splash on the fourth corner. He moved out of the way, splashed me, and that was it.
Oh man, what a story, man. That's so cool.
Yeah, I have it somewhere. I wish I so many, like, I always tried to, get every copy of every match that I did. And I had that one somewhere, but because I always like to watch them back. I used to do this thing. And I remember I wrestled Kazarian once in New Hampshire somewhere at like a high school. And I brought a tripod. This is how long ago it was. I brought a tripod and a camera with me, and I set it up, in the middle of the gym, and I recorded it, and then went out in intermission and got it, and sat in the locker room and watched it. He came over and was like, "Oh," and he was watching it with me, and he was like, "This is smart, good." And I always would do this thing where I'd watch the match 3 times. I'd watch it, and it wasn't something I planned. I just did it this way mentally. I'd watch it once, as a fan, like, just to watch it and be like, if I was I don't know either of the guys in this match. That's not me, and I don't know the guy. Would I be a fan of myself? You know what I mean?
Right.
And then I would watch it again and just watch the fans, and I would see, like, what I wouldn't even watch the match. I would just watch the fans and see what they were reacting to. If someone would, wince or jump or whatever, or pop for something, and I'd go back and see what that was, so I knew what I was doing right, And then I would watch it the 3rd time, and I would just watch me and, like, my little steps, and the little, like we were just talking about, things you can't really talk about, but you know what you're looking for. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I would just do that every time. Every time. Like I said, Triple H was my guy, so I would want to be the student of the game, and I'd want to just, just I would, engulf myself in it, in every little aspect. So that was something I did too. But I know I just went on from Jimmy Snuka to that, but
Yeah.
to finish that off, I have that match somewhere. I want to put it up because I think it would be cool for people to be able to see.
Oh, absolutely. I've always been a Snuka fan. Actually, growing up, I was a big action figure collector, and Snuka's Hasbro figure was one of my favorites out of that whole series.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So let's bring it up to present day. How did you get involved with AEW? Because we've seen you have some matches on AEW Dark. So how did that come about for you during a pandemic? Everyone's looking for work. Pro wrestlers, the indie scene is starting to kind of get its legs under it again, but there for a while there wasn't a lot of shows, and AEW Dark was kind of a place for independent wrestlers to get some work during those times. So how did you get involved with that?
A lot of, it's funny because I did another podcast not too long ago, and we were laughing because I've been doing this for 15 years, but it's like, there's so many indie wrestlers, right? So, like, I'm like, man, a lot of people don't really know my path and how the matches I did with Victory Pro and the TNA guys and the people I got to work with were awesome. Those were like matches that were out there a little bit, but a lot of people don't know I did a lot of extra work with WWE. I worked with WWE like almost every 3 months for like 7 years. And
oh wow, okay.
In 2015, I had a match before a SmackDown with, at the time it was Biff Busick, but it's Oney Lorcan in NXT now. And we wrestled in front. We didn't even know it at the time until we were kind of in there. You know, Triple H was at ringside. You know, Dean Malenko. I could name drop all the agents. Everybody was at ringside, and I was at like my peak of the top of my game. And obviously, you know, I don't think Biff Busick's ever had a bad match in my opinion. He's incredible, and he's so intense. And you know, so the two of us went in there. We locked horns, and I mean, the second I locked up with him was the first time we ever worked with each other. Second I locked up with him, I felt like I was in a shoot fight. Like I was like, man, this guy wants to go just from the lockup.
Yeah.
And we're going, you know, we're fighting back and forth, you know, just working the lockup. We had like 4 minutes. We went through a spot after that, and the referee's telling us to take it home. And we were both like, wait, what? Like we didn't even do anything yet, you know?
Right.
Little did we realize that all they really needed to see was that lockup because it looked so legit. And then I got a call to go down to the Performance Center for a tryout. And this was in 2015. So my class was myself, Matt Riddle, Drew Gulak, Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, Chuck Taylor, Biff, and I know I'm leaving somebody out, but that was the class of guys all going to try out. You know, yeah,
that's a crazy class.
So yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, and I remember being there and kind of just being like, I don't know what I'm doing here. But we ran through the camp. It was actually the last camp before Dusty had passed away. He passed away the following week, but he was there. Wow. We got to do we did the camp the 4 days, and then on the last day we did matches, and it was myself against Johnny Gargano, and we had our match, and we did. In my opinion, I thought it went really great. I never got to see it again, but we had the match. It went great, and then he got signed, and then so did. That was when Ciampa got signed, and Riddle didn't get, but Gulak got signed. A lot of those guys got signed right after that. And then in 2015, that was when that happened. So then, you know, I came home. Nothing really happened after that. And then I started doing extra work again with WWE. In 2019, I took a break for a little while. I was doing a little indies here and there, but nothing crazy. And then WWE started calling again in 2019. I did extra work with them. Then I went down to the Thunderdome. And then after that, I got the call to go and do Dark. So it kind of just started, you know, I don't know, after 2015, I took a little break and then started doing things again in 18. And then everything just, you know, stuff started rolling back up again. So it kind of just, awesome. You know, I'm a Christian, so I call it the grace of God. That's where I go with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely, man. That's a great story. I love hearing that. I love that you've made it back, and now, I mean, your matches on AEW Dark have been great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really like the Jurassic Express when you tagged with Falco.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, that was fun. Those guys are fun, man. Marco's awesome.
So, since you've kind of been behind the scenes with NXT with the tryout down there, you've done extra work with WWE, and now with your spots on Dark. Kind of compare the behind the scenes of each company. How do they compare to each other?
They're very similar in a lot of ways, and they're very different in a lot of ways. I mean, WWE is WWE, you know, and AEW is exactly what you see. You know what I mean? They work hard. They, you know, have a passion and a fire. Not to say the guys in WWE don't, but you know, it shows. You know what I mean? It's
right.
And it's a lot more of a I don't know how to word it. It's a lot more of, in my opinion, it was just a lot more of like a family tight vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's, you know, it's funny because I was thinking about it too just now as you're saying it. You know, like Tony Khan was, you know, I was able to say hello to him and shake his hand and have a conversation with, but I was with Vince too. It's weird. A lot of people have different experiences at WWE. Like Triple H, like 3 or 4 times. Like anytime I saw him, he walked up to me and said hello, or would make eye contact and nod at me, or give me like a handshake, whatever. Vince, same thing. I walked. Funny story. The first time I met Vince McMahon, I was a Rosebud, and I walked out. I was in the bathroom. I was dressed up as Peter Pan, and I walked out of the bathroom, and there's Vince McMahon, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I went to Raw when I was a kid with my dad. I'm having all these memories, right? And then I'm like thinking about when I was a kid and thinking about the first time I meet Vince McMahon, And the first time I'm meeting Vince McMahon in reality is in a Peter Pan costume out of the bathroom. But he was, I mean, big smile, put his hand out. Hey, man, how you doing? I said, hey, my name's Mike. Nice to meet you. Hey, Mike, nice to meet you. Vince, as if I wouldn't know who he was, you know?
Right.
So, I mean, I've never really had a negative experience anywhere. You know, I've been blessed to say that. There's never been anything where I've been like, oh, you know, I couldn't say anything negative. And not just because I'm in the business, I'm working. I really can't. I've always been, you know, same thing. Cody, I walked by, he said hello to me. I said hello to him, said, nice to meet you. You know, the Young Bucks, hello, hey, bro, how you doing? You know, QT Marshall, they're all great people. You know, any experience I've had, I've been very fortunate to say it. In both places, it's been cool, you know?
Yeah, that's great to hear positive stories. And I haven't honestly heard a lot of bad things about any of those guys. I feel like it is a very family feeling place. I've heard other wrestlers say that. They've told us that as well. And but I will say you're the first person we've talked to that's spoken about a Vince McMahon encounter. So that is extremely cool.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, it was so cool to hear that.
I've had, you know, that one was cool. And then I had another one when I was at the Thunderdome, which was just a funny little thing. And I'm like, man, I wish I could be wearing like a body camera right now, because I feel like nobody would not believe it, but like nobody would like, it's just so funny because you think Vince McMahon, right? Like that. And then when I was at the Thunderdome, I was there. Oh man, I don't know if there was anything like hugely memorable about that SmackDown that I did that I could say, oh, it was the one where this happened. But there was like the Funhouse thing played. Yeah. And I was backstage, and you know, I was in Gorilla because I was next. My segment was next, and they're playing. And at the end, the Vince puppet pops up. Yeah. Like, oh, this is such good, you know, at the end or whatever. And he's sitting there, and I'm looking at Vince and that Gorilla, and Vince is watching it, just cracking up. And then when they say the thing at the end with the Vince puppet, he's got like a mouthful of salad. He's just sitting there eating like a salad out of like a big bowl. And he's just like, and he's laughing. You can see the salad fall out of his mouth. It was just so funny. Like, I'm sitting here, like, you know, you just have that moment. Like, I'm standing here at Gorilla watching Vince just shovel down a salad, laughing at himself as a puppet during this, you know, like just those things that you're like, is this real?
Surreal. How surreal.
It was so cool, man. Just like such a cool memory for me, you know, and I don't even say it like poking fun or like, it's just funny because, you know, we grew up watching these guys, and then to be that close and have a little silly memory like, oh, I watched Vince eating a salad laughing at himself on TV. It's like just cool.
Oh, absolutely. You know? That's super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It was fun. Just fun things like that. Just I try to hold on to those things because I remember when I had my first match, it was 2012. It was before a Raw. I had a match, you know, just for the guys, for the agents. And I remember I got in the ring, and I'll never forget William Regal coming up to me and just expressing his, like, you know, happiness about seeing me do it. But I went out, you know, I was in the ring, and I turned around before the match, and I just looked around at everything in the ring. And I just, because I don't know this guy. Anytime I'm there, I'm like, man, what the heck am I doing here? Right. And I looked around, and I'm like, this could be the first and last time I ever do this. I'm standing in a WWE ring in an empty arena in front of some agents at Raw. You know, like, the little kid in me just never believes it. And I don't want to ever get to a place where I'm taking it for granted. You know what I mean? Same thing at the Garden. I was a Rosebud at the Garden once, and like, I must have came back and looked like I slept with a hanger in my mouth because I was smiling so big when I came back after doing it. And they're like, what the hell are you so happy about? Like, you were a friggin' Rosebud for 8 seconds. I'm like, you know, I just did something for WWE at Madison Square Garden. I don't care. You know?
Absolutely. What's the energy like at the Garden?
Oh my gosh, it's that. Yeah, I would never be able. I'd be crazy to even try to describe that. It's unbelievable. And a funny story. I went to WrestleMania 20 when I was a kid, so I took the ticket stub with me that night, and I promised myself, I'm like, I'm gonna find that seat. So before the show,
so cool.
Before the show, I went, and I found the seat, and I just went and sat there for a minute. And when I went to WrestleMania 20, I was in the last seat, in the last row at the top. Like, you could touch the friggin' roof.
Wow.
And I went, and I remember I just sat there for a minute, and I'm a very deep person, obviously. And I like to, you know, nostalgia, and I like I said, I don't want to ever take anything for granted and keep that little kid. The whole reason why I'm 32 years old and in a ton of pain and still pursuing this is because I just don't want to let that little kid in me die, which I think is a lot of what we love wrestling for, you know.
Absolutely.
So I sat in the seat and I just soaked it in. You know, I said, I don't care that I'm dressing up as a chef tonight and I'm going to be a rosebud. I'm at Madison Square Garden working for WWE. How freaking cool is this? You know?
Yeah, no kidding, man. Like just hearing that story, that's a chill bump story right there. To know that you were there and went to find the seat that you were in. I mean, God, that's powerful, man.
Thank you, man. I listen. I mean, you know, you hear guys say it all the time, and I'm sure they mean it just as much as I do. But like, you know, I have a wife and 2 kids, and I love them to death, and they're my life. But I think they all understand what I mean. It doesn't devalue them. I need wrestling like I need air. You know, it keeps the little kid in me alive. So I love this business. I love everything about it. And like I said, I never want to come to a place where I'm taking anything for granted, because a good friend of mine, Glacier, Ray Lloyd, he always told me, you know, he gave me one of the best, he gave me a ton of different, you know, really good advice, but, you know, he always said, just be grateful that you're even able to pursue a dream. Because, you know, when you're not, you know, there's people that would kill to be in your position, to be able to have a dream, not just have a dream, but to pursue it, you know? So, and that's just a mindset I've always had. So when he said it, it always stuck with me. And even when I went to AEW, I mean, anytime I got to have an entrance at AEW. I mean, you know, like,
right,
crazy, right? I mean, like, who? Yeah. I mean, there was a point after I was done with that tryout I had that I thought that was it. You know, I mean, I got a no. You know what I mean? And I thought, well, okay, that's it. No, I pursued the wrong thing for the last 11 or 12 years at that point. But and then it's like, you know, look at this. I mean, fast forward, you know, 5.5 years. And a pandemic, and I'm making my entrance at AEW. Like, you know what I mean? Anything's possible, man. I know I said it before, there's that Disney mentality, but it's really true. I mean, I'm living proof. If I can do what I've done and I've gotten here, literally anything's possible, because if I can do it, anybody can do anything, because I'm no better than anybody else.
And you really, I can tell you appreciate the journey, because I think a lot of times people chasing dreams, myself included, you get so fixated on the destination that you kind of lose yourself in the journey and you don't enjoy it. And it's so refreshing to hear someone who understands the gravity of what they're in the middle of.
Oh, thank you, man. No, it's true. I you know, you have to enjoy the journey. That's more than half of it, is the journey getting there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, man, we your positivity makes us not want to let you leave the tavern, but before we let you leave, we have 6 questions that we like to ask at the end, just to kind of have some fun right before we let you go.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. So the first question, you said you're from Long Island, correct?
Yes.
All right. So towns like, you know, Long Island, New York, they're known for pizza. So being from there, what's the best place to get a slice of pizza?
Oh man, Bella Cucina in I believe it's West Islip. Great place, my favorite.
Awesome.
No, all right. Question number 2, the Montreal screw job. Whose side are you on, Bret Hart or Vince McMahon?
Oh man. God, that's hard. I gotta say Vince, and I'll. Is this like a rapid thing? Because I could give you.
No, you can go in.
Nope, go in on it.
You know, because at the end of the day, no matter what, and I think Undertaker said this in a different way, but like, it's Vince's company, and whatever he wants, at the end of the day, that's what you have to do. It doesn't matter about what you want. He's the guy signing your checks, so what he asks you to do, you have to do. You got to put your ego aside.
Absolutely, man. All right, question number 3. Which is easier, a down dog or a 3-legged dog?
Which is easier, a down? I don't understand that one.
Oh, it's a DDPY question.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I should know that. I'm embarrassed. Don't put that in. 3-legged.
Awesome.
All right. Question number 4. Speaking of Undertaker, who you just brought up, should the Undertaker streak have ended?
Absolutely. When it did?
Yeah.
No, not when it did, but it definitely should have ended.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Question number 5. The pandemic's over. You're making towns again. You're driving city to city. You can have 3 wrestlers in the car with you, alive or dead. What 3 wrestlers are in the car with you?
Oh, wow. Any 3.
Any 3.
Yep. Any 3.
Chris Jericho, Miro, and Eddie Guerrero.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, man.
That's a great car.
Yeah.
I love that question too, because every answer we get is it's a combination that I'm always like, oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun, that car. There'd be a lot of praying
Absolutely.
in that car though, because we're all Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there'd be a lot
All
of
men of faith.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 6. Who is the Starving Artist?
Wow. So I'll answer this somewhat in character, because it's the best characters are just yourself with the volume turned up. So it's as simple as, asking an artist, any great artist, who they are. I could cut you a promo on who I am, but I think any great artist wouldn't have a lot to say, but they'd point you in direction of their greatest masterpiece, their most prized work.
Sure.
Getting to know who the Starving Artist is, it means watching what he does on a canvas. Any great artist is defined by their art. So for me, I'm defined by what I do. Getting to know who I am means seeing what I do in the ring.
Absolutely, man. Well, we've had a good time getting to know you. Before we let you go, let everybody know where they can find you on social media, Pro Wrestling Tees.
Yes, thank you so much. So both handles are the same for Twitter and Instagram. It's Artist Magnum. And my Pro Wrestling Tees is prowrestlingtees.com/SA Mike Magnum.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, guys,
Mike.
make sure you guys are going there, support the Starving Artist Mike Magnum. We've had a great time having you here. You always have a seat at the tavern whenever you want to come back. And we look forward to seeing you continue on with your journey, man.
It means a lot, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thanks
so
so
much,
much.
Mike. Have a good evening.
You too, guys.